Well, it is another no pucks given, but we're combining it with a Penguins live chat. Let me maybe get this a little bit closer. Hi, I'm Dan Kingerski on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now YouTube channel, also the Facebook channel, and Lord knows what else we're going to do today. So instead of taking a day off in sunny LA, I could do this, and you can see exactly how crazy sunny it is. I know I'm rubbing it in to you all as it's like 10 degrees in Pittsburgh. It's cold in LA. It's only like 50, 55 degrees. So here's what's on tap. We're going to talk with Penguins play-by-play guy, Joe Brand. We're going to kind of get his thoughts on this weird tweener state the Penguins are in. After Joe, we'll talk to Hannah Kel, our brand new Vegas Golden Knights beat reporter. But Hannah, of course, has covered the Penguins for most of the season too. So we'll check in with her before we ship her out to Vegas. Interesting note last night. I don't know if you stayed up late to watch the game. The Penguins never let up. I mean, by the end, the LA Kings were just kind of like, okay, the Kings had been the one to pack it in. It was a bit of the role reversal for the Penguins. No Rickard Rakell back in Pittsburgh, tending to a family matter. Oh, I should probably turn off my phone, huh? Trust me, we have. I've thrown this together all last second when I realized there was a 3-hour time difference, and we had the time to do it. So I'm not going to keep Joe Brand waiting much longer here, because hey, there's Joe.
What's up, Dan? How are you?
Sweater on. Look at that.
Yeah, you gave me enough time to spruce up a little bit and get camera ready, so I appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate the mustache as well. Joe, I mean, this is your first year full-time with the Penguins, obviously full-time play-by-play. You were in Chicago. So you've seen how bad it can get. And with the Penguins this season, there's that tweener vibe, right? Like they're not a top-tier contender, but they're also not, amongst the dregs of the league. What are your thoughts on kind of where they sit and what comes next? Not for the next couple of years, but like for the next month, what comes next?
About a month into the season, a lot of people were drawing the comparisons. And I mean, honestly, for the past couple of years, I feel like we've drawn the comparisons with the Blackhawks and the Penguins just because of the dynasties aligning around the same time. But the difference is, Jonathan Toews wasn't the same player. Patrick Kane was on his way out. The Penguins still have a very good Sidney Crosby, a very good Evgeny Malkin, a very good Chris Letang. I mean, pieces that they can rely on. But clearly that's not enough. And I think Penguins fans know that, and everyone understands that throughout this year. So I don't know if the Penguins are ready to take that drastic of a step, because I think the Blackhawks at the time saw the writing on the wall, but they were much closer towards being completely distant from that dynasty than where the Penguins are now. But I don't know, does that make it more challenging for the Penguins at this moment? Because they do still have some very solid pieces. I do know that going through a complete rebuild is no guarantee. It's not very fun, and it's just difficult to understand what you're going to get on the back end. You have to have a lot of trust in who drafts players. You got to have a lot of trust in who develops players. And I'm not saying the Penguins don't have that, but there is just a lot of uncertainty. So with last night's performance, it's pretty interesting how this team shows that they can compete with some of the best teams in the league at random times. The unfortunate thing is they're missing the consistency of that right now. But boy, was last night fun. It was a full-on effort. Phil Bork, my partner, was probably calling it the most complete game of the year, considering who they were playing too at that. But it's just a matter of continuing to step forward with that effort, because lately for the Penguins, it's been a lot of one step forward and then two steps back.
It really has. How's it working with Borky? I mean, here's a guy who's lived more life than you and I ever will combined. He's like the bridge. He's the bridge from the Mario championships to the Crosby championships, and he's a lot of fun. I know for the fans, what's it like working beside Borky?
It's just as fun and 10 times more fun. He's everything you want in a partner. He brings the excitement each and every game. He's the easiest guy to lean on. I feel, so safe with the broadcast, knowing that I have his expertise, his fandom, just his connection with the Pittsburgh Penguins is a huge asset for me. And it allows me to just do my job and just kind of do my thing. And he provides everything. He provides the insight. He provides the entertainment. He provides the breakdown. It's really been a wonderful, what is it now, 48 games. It's been really cool. I've worked with a lot of different people. I've pretty much loved everyone that I've worked with, but Borky constantly brings a different element that only he can bring. He's a very unique dude. He's very authentic dude too. I mean, everything you hear him on the air, that's him in real life. He's an energetic guy. He's a supportive guy. That's
just the thing I've always noticed about him. He cares about like the overall product. And like, there have been times when I've been wrong about something, and he and I did a TV show there on Channel 11 for a hot minute before NBC lost the NHL rights, and he'd be like, no, look at this, look at that. He cared about not just the team, but also that I wouldn't hang my ass out there in an incorrect sort of way, which I always just appreciated. I just would just listen and kind of absorb what he was telling me.
No, for sure. And I mean, to pull the curtain back a little bit, like as play-by-play guys or as play-by-play broadcasters, sometimes you feel like you need to be the full-on entertainment at all times. And you got to bring something that other people don't to make yourself stand out and provide an entertaining product. I mean, he does that. I don't have to worry about keeping people locked in because he's going to do that. As long as I do my job, he's going to handle the rest. And you're right. He cares about the overall product. It's not just about him being right. It's about what's being right that's said on the broadcast. It's not just about celebrating a Penguins goal. It's about talking about how detrimental the turnover was and bringing the emotion with it. I think that's why so many fans resonate with him and are just able to absorb what he brings every day because he thinks the game like a fan, or he lives the game like a fan at least, but he's got almost a player, coach, and fan aspect all wrapped into one.
It's a pretty good, I didn't even think about the coach Borky. That should scare a few parents. But I want to get back maybe to the on ice part of this, because it's been confusing to me. And I feel like, maybe you and I and Borky are the only people who have done all 49 games to this point. So nobody else has been there, quite as much or, insanely as the three of us. I honestly didn't know what we were going to see last night. I think, we were talking with some of the colleagues and, this is going to be a tough night, that maybe the Washington loss ripped their heart out. And it kind of felt like that Saturday night and even Sunday morning as I ruminated on it a little bit more. And then they literally took it to the Kings from, about the first shift. There were some mistakes, but they get on their toes and they didn't let up. So they've got 4 games now in this road trip, 4 winnable games. Joe, answer the impossible question. Which team are we going to see against Anaheim, Seattle, San Jose, and Utah?
I can't answer impossible questions. I've given up trying to do that. You're absolutely right.
What fun is that?
And honestly, heading into that game, I can understand that narrative. A rough game against Washington. You go into LA. It's their first home game since the tragedies. They've got all this emotion, all this extra energy tapped into the building. And the Kings are 14-2-1 at home. Like everything was going against the Penguins, not to mention Raquel wasn't with the team. So I give the team a lot of credit for getting up for that game, but staying up for that game. We've seen the Penguins get off to great starts and not be able to continue it after the first period, but they did that and so much more last night. I don't know what's going to happen against the Anaheim Ducks because we have seen the letdown after a good performance. But this Penguins team is also a bit of a chameleon team, right? They get up for some good opponents. And then sometimes when they play some weaker ones, maybe their A game isn't brought. But I think the players understand it's getting towards crunch time. They understand where they're at in the standings, even if they don't look at it every single day. And they understand where they're at as a team too. It's been lately, again, the situation of one step forward and two steps back. This road trip is huge for this team right now. And who knows?
It is make or break, isn't it? I mean, this is, I mean, if they don't win at least 3 of the next 4, they're probably 8 points out of a playoff spot. And Kyle Dubas is not going to erase the lines in the sand like he did last year.
Yeah, and I mean this all is coming after a rough homestand where we thought that was kind of a make or break situation. But I don't know. Maybe after you go through that rough spell at home at PPG Paints Arena and cough up some games that were very winnable, and you turn it around at the longest road trip of the year, an opportunity to develop some camaraderie. I mean, maybe this win against the Kings can propel them a little bit, but that's all easier said than done with this team right now. There's still a ways to go. And I feel like this break that's coming up at the Four Nations Challenge is just such a long break for a lot of these guys. It's going to be interesting to see how other teams fare after that. So yeah, you would like to set yourself up in a better spot before it arrives.
Some comments here because we're doing this live.
There's a chat.
Yeah, there's a chat. You can't see it. I can. From Ryan Mill. Have you ever heard of this guy?
Oh yeah, I've heard of his voice. Yes.
Yeah, he's a complete troll. He's like, "Hey, is it hard sharing a single voice between the two of you?" He is on this bandwagon. Like he is on this kick. He and Metzer, your intermission host, that we sound alike. I don't hear it, not even a little bit, but they are insistent on it.
I mean, I don't know what to say. When you told me the first time, I'm very flattered, Dan. I really am.
You're flattered.
Pleased.
Yeah.
You're flattered. Yeah. Okay. All right. What are we doing now?
Oh, you know what, man? This is an off day for you too, so I'm going to let you go. I'm not going to burden you all day with like one of these hour-long podcasts. So I appreciate you hopping on and lending some credibility to this crappy podcast and little live chat that we do every week. Joe, it's been a pleasure, meeting you this season and getting to know you and hanging out with you guys, and I might even do it once or twice the rest of the season too. But thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, likewise, pal. Appreciate the kind words, and yeah, always happy to hop on. And don't sell yourself short. This is a lot of fun. No matter what Ryan Mills says, I enjoy this podcast.
He just hurts me so. All right, that is Joe Brand. I'm gonna thanks very much, Joe. We'll take him off the platform there. I honest to God, I don't hear it, but I hear good things about Joe and doing play-by-play. You hear things. I hear things, and I've heard a lot of compliments compliments towards Joe there. So before we get to Hannah, did I even text Hannah Hannah Kel. Yeah, I told her to jump on about 1:45. So it is exactly 1:45. I'm going to just fill some time here with a couple of the chat questions. Let's see here. Christopher said, "I can't wait to chat about the Spittin' Chicklets boys wanting to send Dubas to the moon." I've missed this entirely. I didn't realize they lit him up. I'd be curious to hear or know what they said. Devin Wolf on Facebook. This team just gives us up and down moments this season. But I ain't going to complain about them playing that way for 60 minutes. Yeah, that was something. That was something impressive and special what they did last night. I don't necessarily know if it was game plan. I don't know if this was just kind of an organic thing that the Penguins did. But I don't know if you noticed how puck hungry they were. And I don't mean just kind of, playing tight gaps and really just jumping on loose pucks. Even when the Kings had the puck, especially, in the Kings zone, they're trying to break out. The Penguins jumped on them. And by taking away that heartbeat that the Kings would have to make a play forward, they created chaos. They created turnovers. They didn't let LA settle into their game. I fully expected LA after the first, 5 or 7 minutes to kind of settle in, chip the puck deep, set up their neutral zone wall, and gobble up the Penguins. That's what I would have bet on last night, without question. And the Penguins never let them do it. It was almost like a smaller boxer, shorter arms, less weight, never letting the heavyweight throw the big punch because the Penguins just stayed inside, just kind of working. LA never was able to establish their game, at least for more than a minute or two. And I think Alex Nedeljkovic last night, if you get to watch the videos on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now YouTube channel, Ned was saying, every time they got momentum, we took it back. We'd spend 5 minutes in their end. Completely true, actually. It felt like minutes at a time, not shifts or seconds, but minutes at a time. It was pretty incredible, actually. The problem with Monday night, the Kings are not a fast, dynamic team. And because the Kings aren't a fast, dynamic team, the Penguins actually probably had this, a bit of a skating advantage on them. And so they didn't have that internal conflict to try to keep up with a younger team or out-talent a very talented team. They can handle these big, heavy teams of the Western Conference. And what were they, 7-2 before last night, 6-2 against the West? And it's because they don't have that, at least this is my pop psychology reading on it, right? So, don't take this to the bank. They don't have to prove themselves against the Western Conference. By the way, excuse me, I have no cough button here. This is straight live. Sound, I don't see anybody complaining about the sound, so it must be okay. All right, so there's Hannah. Oh, I can see Hannah. You can't see Hannah yet. I can see Hannah. She's got like the microphone and the headphones on. So I'm going to haze the rookie and make her wait. We're just going to see how long it takes before she goes away. No, I'm kidding. Let's see here. I want to get to one more quick question here. Someone says, talk trades today. Well, yeah, we'll get there. When I get past Joe and Hannah, we are absolutely going to talk about the Penguins trade rumors. Listen, I couldn't do that with Joe. Joe is the team's play-by-play guy. He's not going to dive into the mud and start talking about trade rumors, right? We can get to some of that with Hannah. Before I do bring her on, in fact, I'll bring her on now, but I'm going to set this up very crystal clear for everybody. I saw the internet go nuts yesterday with the Penguins fire sale. It's happening. Use common sense here, okay? It didn't come from TSN. It didn't come from Sportsnet. It didn't come from The Athletic. It didn't come from Pittsburgh Hockey Now. It didn't come from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. It didn't come from the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review. It didn't even come from our indie competitors, DK. Didn't come from any of those places. It didn't come from a Toronto media outlet that is plugged in and does national news or, like Sportsnet 590 radio with Kipper and the like, the former national guys. Didn't come from there. So always ask yourself, where did this come from? Like, where is this information coming from? And I don't want to beat up people who actually used to work for us too much. this is a gambling website that really exists only to be linked by Spectre's hockey, and it was pretty much an exaggeration. It was a hardcore exaggeration. We know Penguins trades are in fact coming. We know that Marcus Pettersson, Pittsburgh Hockey Now, I think, was the last source on the story, 10 days ago now, that no contract talks had occurred. And if you read that story, Marcus Pettersson's face, said it all. And I tried to describe it as best I could. It was a full-fledged, disappointed acknowledgement. Erik Karlsson, on the other hand, has opened the door. He's focused on the playoffs, but he did not dismiss the possibility that if the Penguins take the long route, that it might not be for him. So at least that part, we're caught up on the trade rumors. We'll get into Pettersson and Karlsson and Raquel and all of that. I wanted to talk to Hannah because I think everyone's sick of hearing me opine and speak to the Penguins. I've only written about 100,000 words this month on these guys. Hannah, our brand new Vegas Hockey Now beat writer, how are you?
You know what? I can't complain. It's a little cold, and my apartment does not have central heating. But other than that, okay.
So you got like the little heaters, hidden around the house,
space heaters and humidifiers.
Oh man, I had to put my coat on the other night too. It was like 50 degrees.
Dan, it's a balmy -2 here.
Is it that cold? Okay.
Yes, it is. Real feel.
Well, we shan't burden Pittsburgh people with the weather. They know what it is. I don't. And maybe that's the one saving grace of this godforsaken journey that I'm on this road trip, is that I'm not in -2 because I am a miserable baby when it's that cold. I mean, I'm miserable anyway, but I become a complete baby when it's cold. Hannah, you got to see the game last night, and you've been, up close to this team at various points as well. Do they have a chance to make the playoffs? A legitimate chance? I mean, everybody has a chance still. Even the Sabres technically have a chance. But do the Penguins have a chance?
I'm going
to take your silence is probably not.
Make a little bit of a hot take here.
Okay.
I'm going to say they go on a run on this road trip. They make things interesting by the trade deadline, and it comes down to the last few weeks when they regress to the mean and start playing 500 hockey again. They're not going to beat the Los Angeles Kings every night. They brought their A game. The Kings did not. I mean, who on that team looked like they were playing NHL hockey other than maybe Adrian Kempe, who only exists to score on the Penguins?
I didn't realize what a shot he had.
He's got a rocket. He's got a rocket. He terrorizes the Penguins.
I knew he had a good shot.
The
that circle blast last night was
the one off
vintage
the,
Ovechkin.
The one off the pipe or the one that went in?
What's that?
Which one? The one off the pipe or the one that went in? Because there were two on the same sequence.
Yeah, they just worked it around. No, the one that went in was, it was vintage Ovechkin. Like it got near his stick and it was in the back of the net before he even finished the follow through. I was like, my God, that was something.
He's got a rocket. And he was probably down 3-0 on that kind of night that it was with the ceremony and all.
Yeah, the LA Kings are a team. So you think the Penguins go on a run here and get right there to the edge once again?
I think it's going to come down not to them, but to, do the Canadians continue to surprise people on this post-Patrick Laine kick they're on? Do the Senators continue to play well with their rookie goaltender, Levi Merilainen, who is channeling the spirit of Patty Waugh or Dominic Hasek? And when Linus Ullmark comes back, obviously him too. Do the Blue Jackets continue to surprise people because they were in a playoff spot?
Yeah. Well, I don't think the Blue Jackets do. The Blue Jackets don't have the goaltending. This
No,
is crazy. The Canadians, though,
they've got
you
chutzpah.
give a young team that much incentive, they start feeling momentum. They're too dumb to know they shouldn't be doing this.
They got chutzpah, and they're not talking themselves out of it yet.
Yeah, which is kind of funny because 6 weeks ago, Marty St. Louis wasn't an NHL coach. It was maybe time for them to find somebody better. The
It's
poor
funny how that
Canadians, Slavkovsky was, kind of a disappointment. Other players in the draft are better. The Canadians didn't really have enough goaltending. Sam Montembeault was, he's okay. Maybe we overhyped him. And then boom, here they are. And I think they're incredibly fun to watch.
They are fun to watch. I don't know if they make the playoffs, if they get passed by a more veteran team like the Bruins, if they ever figure out what's wrong in Boston.
The Bruins are done.
Lord, I hope so. Am I allowed to say that? I'm tired of Boston. It's the same thing every year. They beat Toronto and then they get wiped.
Beating Toronto is kind of fun to watch from an outside perspective.
It
it certainly adds some salt to the NHL stew.
Got that right. But
All right.
if given a choice between seeing this Montreal Canadiens team and this Boston Bruins team, I'm taking the Canadiens all day, every day, and twice on Sunday.
Yeah. What did the Canadians give up for Line A? Remind me again.
I don't even know. Not much.
It was like an empty grocery bag, maybe.
Yeah.
Were there even pucks in it?
There was maybe a receipt in it.
Yeah.
IOU. Yeah, an IOU. So to answer your question, the long and short of it all, I don't really think that's up to the Penguins. I think the Penguins are who they are. And they'll continue to be who they are because they're obviously not going to add at the trade deadline, even if they're not having a fire sale.
Yeah, I hate when those reports come out because it just makes all of our jobs so much tougher. Because everybody they're not one of those beat writers who can't say the truth. People think if people knew how often I irritated the Penguins organization with the stuff I report and write, they would shake seriously. It's like every day I irritate somebody from top to bottom over there. I am not the person who wouldn't report something if I knew it. And Kingerski is he's Mike Sullivan's boy. He and Mike Sullivan are buddies. Yeah, look at you laughing. You know the truth.
Which is pretty funny. Anyway.
Yes, it's a running joke amongst colleagues that, you just got Danned. When Sullivan doesn't want to give an answer, kind of he'll give you the Dan answer. I don't know what you mean, or...
I don't know why you would ask that.
Yeah. But anyway, so when someone from the outside drops a big bombshell, for some reason, in the zeitgeist that we live, it's more credible. And I wish that weren't the case. It's been a paradigm shift. And I know I've just used the words paradigm, zeitgeist, and all kinds of other stuff in this podcast. I probably shouldn't. Did you know the average American reader is down to a 4th grade level?
That's disturbing.
It is. So when you start writing for Vegas Hockey Now, make sure to use lots of small words.
Oh, boy.
You've done a nice job, by the way, as you've taken over. So I kind of asked Joe Brand this question, and maybe I'll rephrase it a little bit since you and I have touched on the playoff race. I happen to think that the other shoe has to drop sooner than later, because the longer Kyle Dubas lets this team kind of stick around, the harder it's going to be, or the more it's going to hurt them. And I almost think like last year with the Jake Gensel thing, if he had stuck to his guns and, there were 3 points at which he said, okay, this is kind of the line in the sand. We need to be X, this close, or we need to be in this position. But, by this day. We need to do well on the Florida trip, and they get swept. We need to do this, and they got beat down. And he kind of just kept kicking the can down the road, so that when he did finally trade Jake Gensel, it ripped the team's heart out. Had he ripped their heart out in, say, January instead of March, they would have had time to recover and, learn what a scrappy little guy Michael Bunting is. And I think it would have been different. I'm curious if he's learned his lesson from that, or if he's going to give Sidney Crosby and the championship core more rope. Maybe that's my question for you as I talk myself into it. Does Kyle Dubas act quickly, or does he give them more rope? Dun, dun, dun.
Well, when you say act quickly, are you referring
the
to
next couple of weeks
Marcus
here, before
Pettersson
the Four
situation?
Nations? What's that?
Are you referring to Marcus Pettersson when you say act quickly?
I think he's the primary one, right? He's the low-hanging fruit in the conversation.
Yeah. I don't.
Does he act before the Four Nations or not?
I say he does something before then.
All right.
I'm not going to speculate on how big that something would be. It could just be trading Anthony Beauvillier, who's playing quite well again in the top 6. Funny how that works.
Yeah, he's an interesting case.
Oh yeah, he's pest. He's a mosquito. He is a small little pest.
But you can tell he played for the Barry Trotz
Oh
early
my
on in
God,
his career.
He's such an Islander, isn't he?
He is, because he is so detail oriented. He doesn't make those silly, stupid mistakes. He doesn't make the turnovers. He is always in the right position. So when you put him with a guy like Sidney Crosby, he's not going to put up the same numbers that Rickard Rakell does. He's not going to help Sidney Crosby put up the same numbers. But there he is last night, just in the right spot every time, poking a puck across the line, chipping it to Crosby behind the net, and all those little things.
I mean,
I don't think fans realize how good how helpful he can be.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not comparing the talent, but when you see how well Michael Bunting, or not Michael Bunting, I'm sorry, I got my B's mixed up. Anthony Beauvillier does with Sidney Crosby. It's similar to why Gensel did so well, because they're both smart and they're good down low and they know how to get position in front of the net, even though they're small. Obviously, not saying the talent, but similar type of player, similar type of hockey mind.
So, what question though? Does Dubas jump before the Four Nations?
Yeah, I think he does. Just because, like you said.
And yes, this is a full 1 liter bottle. When you're in a hotel with no cups, you do what you got to do. I saw you look at me like, what the hell?
I thought it was a 40. I was like, wow, that kind of day.
If it were a 40, it wouldn't have lasted this long.
Oh, so the hell trip continues. Anyway, yeah, I think so. Like you said about Erik Karlsson, he's focused on the playoffs. They think they can. They have belief, misguided or not. If Kyle Dubas doesn't think that they can.
Yeah.
I mean, Jake Gensel got traded and they laid a 5-0 egg to Washington that night or something like that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think I might have mentioned this on a previous podcast. I don't mind talking about it now. Oh, that was the night that the other outlet completely stole my headline a day later. And I forget what very unique word I used that nobody else would use that kind of word. And I was talking with Dave Molinari, like, Dave, do I write this? Do I do this? It was the night the Penguins gave up. And I wrote it and I didn't hit publish because it was just so brusque and dark and almost angry. And there was a tinge of vitriol in there. I'm like, nah, this is almost fanboy. Can't do it. And lo and behold, the fanboy sitting like 10 or 15 feet away was like, great idea. And did that anyway. But I digress.
Well, now I'm curious. What was the title?
It,
What was the word? Now,
well, I can't remember the word. This is last March. I mean, realize I can't remember yesterday. I mean, last night is kind of getting fuzzy by this point. But it was something the night the Penguins gave up.
okay.
The gave up part was the dramatic hook to get all of the readers. All right, so you're getting your feet wet with Vegas, which is a unique fan base, a lot of Pittsburgh crossover.
Sure.
Golden Knights fans like the Penguins because of, some goalie. And Penguins fans like the Golden Knights because of some goalie. How is your first week there with on this crazy starship going?
Well, they're not doing well. That's not
great.
my fault, though. That's not my fault. I'm not bringing the bad luck. They've been on that run ever since end of December when they got shut out by the New York Islanders, which is something. It's been fun. It's been great. I mean, I'm having a blast. It's the dream, and that's
we'll get you out to
how I
Vegas here
usually
pretty
say the
quick.
dream.
I think people at this point know I own National Hockey Now, which is all of the Hockey Nows, Steelers Now, Pittsburgh Baseball Now, Patriots Football Now, Seattle Sports Now. The only thing I don't own is Pittsburgh Sports Now. I actually bought the rights to the rest of the country from them, but they keep Pittsburgh Sports Now. So I was like, you know what? In 23, I spent ungodly sums of money to live in Vegas for like 3 months. And the site was doing really well, built a fan base, and we have just stumbled and struggled to fill the beat writer position since. I'm like, wait a second. What about Hannah? I wonder if she'd be interested. And you're like, yes. Like,
Please.
wait, you want the details? You're like, no, yes.
No, they're not necessary.
Well, Hannah, it's a pleasure having you as part of the Hockey Now family. Your enthusiasm, I love having it around. And it actually makes my job a little easier when someone likes their job. So thank you.
Oh, I don't think like sums it up.
Very cool. That's Hannah Kel of Vegas Hockey Now, who has, in fact, covered the Penguins points this season as well. Thanks, Hannah.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's get to the live chat portion here of the No Pucks Given podcast being recorded on Tuesday, December 21st. It's 2:09 in the East. It's 11:09 here in LA. I already have an 8-hour workday in. These time zone shifts get me. So I'm going to start at the top for the questions. Bear with me. I'm not going to give long, expansive answers today since we're already 40 minutes in with Joe Brand and Hannah Kel. But it beats having me just drone on for 90 minutes. So, returning to last week, did I ever deal with Kevin Hatcher, and does he remind me of his son-in-law, Tristan Jarry? Actually, I never dealt with with Tristan Hatcher. Yeah, with Kevin Hatcher. I'm trying to think of when. No. If I did, I don't remember it. Sorry, Gable. Let's go to Jake Bacon. Outside of Pettersson, who's the most likely to be traded? I've been thinking about this because Pettersson is such the easy target, right? I know people have jumped to Rickard Rakell, and he certainly is doing nothing to lower his values, doing everything to raise it this year. By the same token, there is absolutely zero urgency to trade Rakell. You can do it this summer. You can do it next season. You can hang on to Rakell for as long as you want until somebody meets your price, or maybe he sticks around long enough. He's kind of part of the solution once again. Brian Rust has the protection, and I quite frankly, it would be weird seeing Brian Rust in a different uniform. He just seems like such a Pittsburgh guy that I think he would go kicking and screaming. But you can't trade him until July 1. Yeah, I think the bottom 6 is where you look. I don't even think, to be honest, I know Drew O'Connor got a lot of kind of trade pub early in the season. I don't think Drew O'Connor has a lot of trade value right now. I think if the Penguins were to trade O'Connor, they would get pennies on the dollar, meaning they would be selling at the lowest possible point. If it could be worked out, it would make sense for the Penguins to sign Drew O'Connor for next season, maybe even a 2-year affordable deal. You're not going to give Drew O'Connor $4 million. If that's what he wants, then you take the 5th round pick, 4th round pick, 3rd round, whatever you would get for him. If he doesn't take, an affordable deal. But if he takes an affordable deal, you sign that as quickly as you can, because there is so much talent to be tapped there. I still think he's a center. I think maybe with a summer of working on faceoffs, knowing he's going to be a center might change a whole lot for him. He opens up when he's in the middle. He really does. His speed is so evident. He can go end wall to end wall and hunt the puck in a different sort of way. When he's maybe that was the wrong term. He's not really a puck hunter as center, but I'm kind of visualizing him coming up the middle of the ice and picking sides and creating turnovers. He's with that wingspan. So there's a lot there to like. But no team is going to pay for, going to pay full market value anyway for a 26-year-old who has, he scored in just one game since October. He had 2 goals against Detroit, but, hasn't really scored since. So O'Connor is, for me, kind of off the table. Like Hannah mentioned, Anthony Beauvillier is a sneaky good player that another team that's paying attention probably would jump on. Certainly, Blake Lizotte signing a 2-year deal. And he's young. I think the Penguins might want to keep him around. The difference in their lineup with and without Blake Lizotte, significant. Maybe the next person on board would be Noel Acciari. Yeah, as I talk it through, Noel Acciari, I think, would be maybe second in line for the trade conversations. I think I answered every question 6 times there. I can't even think. One PBD, one PB decode, something decoded. Anyway, trade Pettersson, Raquel, Lizotte, and DOC. Why? Let's see here. Big Joe, is that your cousin? Great stuff. I honestly, Brian Metzer was the first person to say that Joe Brand and I sounded alike. I don't hear it. One thing I noticed is when the Pens are faster, they look better, but when they aren't, it really shows. I suppose so. They still haven't. I mean, they did in December. They adopted that neutral zone structure, which was very much to their benefit. I haven't seen it executed as well or as consistently since the break ended. Or since the second half of the season began December 28th, however you want to phrase that. It's because they've been trying to skate with teams. They tried to skate with Carolina, and they did those things, and they weren't true to their best game. They were trying to be true to who they think they are. And that's the constant push and pull of Mike Sullivan, trying to get them to understand that, their best game doesn't resemble what it used to. Derek Mills, at some point, to truly build a contender, won't the Penguins need at least 2 or 3 high draft picks that hit? Not necessarily. That's the Derek, that's the thinking that ensnared Detroit, Buffalo, Ottawa, Anaheim, San Jose. All of these teams I'm rattling off tanked. Chicago, they absolutely tanked to get that number 1 pick or the top 3 pick and to keep getting them. The problem is, look where they all are. They're all still at the bottom. Detroit, I think Todd McClellan is finally getting that team at least into the middle of the pack. But that's not where you would expect them to be after 8 years of rebuilding. So when you say, don't they need a top draft pick or 2 to hit? It's a gamble. Obviously Montreal has had enough high draft picks and they're starting to charge. Columbus has had high draft picks for 20 years. And they've won how many playoff series in their entire franchise existence? 1, 2, 1. I think it's only 1. So I think the better way to go, obviously you have to hit on a draft pick or 3. You have to find centers. You have to build through the middle. You can get talent. You can get talented wingers. You can find those guys a bit easier. I think for a team like Pittsburgh, given its history and everything, they could build a team and then find a number 1 center on free agency or via trade. I think that's the more likely route, given Dubas's stated aversion to the tear down, rebuild, and drafting at the top for several years. Black Swan says, thank you for what you are doing. I don't even know how to respond to that. Thank you. It's kind of weird to me to get compliments, so don't do that. My question is, do you really believe about a huge trade coming up? No. There is not a fire sale coming. There are trades coming. There is not a fire sale coming. Full stop, period. Let's see here. I keep thinking DOC will be a good move if he's signed for a reasonable cost. He is a good bottom sixer. I agree. O'Connor's been playing really well. He helps you win even when he's not scoring. That doesn't necessarily mean he has a lot of trade value, though. So you're exactly right. I think keeping DOC, I think keeping Drew would be a smart move for the Penguins at this point. Maybe with Washington, they were just tired. No. As you saw last night, the Penguins, they should have been more tired Monday than they were Saturday. It's not like Buffalo took a lot out of them. Buffalo didn't beat them up Friday night. It's a pretty easy flight, Buffalo to DC, no problems there. It wasn't like they had to take a train. Wasn't like they had to drive all night to Pittsburgh, catch a train in Pittsburgh that got stranded in Connellsville for 2.5 hours because of a disabled freight train blocking the tracks, get into Washington at like 5 o'clock, go straight to the arena where you eat gummy bears and Doritos for dinner, covering a hockey game, get back to a destroyed, disgusting Airbnb where you get 3 or 4 hours of sleep on a hard little couch because that's the only piece of clean furniture. Then you go to the airport where they promptly lose your bag. Well, actually, someone steals your bag your carry-on bag, no less. So you spend a couple days in LA in the same clothes. It's not like the Penguins had to go through that. I don't know who did have to go through that. You can see the bags under my eyes are a little bigger than recently. Anyway, Georgia says Tanger was robbed due to that sneaky goalie and his net. I don't know if you guys watched the postgame. I did ask Mike Sullivan about that. I kept it vague. I kind of wanted him to tell me the story, and he sort of smirked. All's well that ends well because the Penguins win. He didn't, that goal didn't cost them. Sullivan sort of smirks, and it's like, yeah, the net might have been off a little bit, but it was going the other way. But when it was coming back his way, give the goalie credit. That was a veteran move. He really knocked it off. So, yeah, that it actually should have been a goal. By the way I understand the rules, maybe they've changed it since then. Maybe things have changed. I'm not a referee who studies the rule book every year, but yeah, I think the puck crossed the line. Their guy knocked the net off, and yeah. Josh Shaw says Ned seems to be playing better since Jari was out on waivers. Why do you think that is? I'm going to quibble with you a little bit there. That would be a great story if it were true. I would have written that Tuesday morning if that were true. But like going back to the Edmonton win, Nedeljkovic makes 40 saves in the win. And you just go back over the last month. Look at how many saves Nedeljkovic has had to make. He had the one stinker. Was it Ottawa when they lost 5-0? Otherwise, I don't think that he is playing significantly better without Tristan Jarry. I think this is how he's been playing, and maybe there's a bit brighter spotlight on him now. Jay Son says it came from a Montreal beat writer. No, it didn't. The Penguins, the big bombshell yesterday was on a small gambling site. I don't want to beat the people up because I know exactly what happened. I can see it from a mile away without knowing the insides of it. And yes, a lot of Penguins are on the trade block. That doesn't equate to a fire sale. I bet you Christopher meant to put an F in there. Well, that was an odd sentence. Christopher says, if he couldn't get a first for Jake, what's Petey at best? Third and a middling prospect? ? Don't forget, the Penguins took a little bit less on the future side to get Michael Bunting. They probably could have gotten a late first if they didn't get an NHL player in return, but they wanted that Michael Bunting sort of return as part of the deal. So, I think maybe we're comparing apples and pears, not even the oranges on this. Just, there's a bit of a difference there. But what's Marcus Pettersson worth? He is worth at least a second and probably a middling prospect all day long. Every day, all day. He's having a bit of a rough year. I think this stuff is wearing on him a little bit. Devin says sound just got delayed for a few seconds. You'll be talking, but the screen is frozen. Otherwise, it's good. Well, I am on the hotel Wi-Fi. So that was half an hour ago. Sorry, guys. Let's see here. Let's go back to Cal 66. I was giving Dubas the benefit of the doubt, but this year will define my belief in his leadership. That's an interesting take, Cal 66. I'm not saying you're wrong. Next year was my circled year. Year 3 was, to me, the pivot point because he had so much, still has so much to undo. I don't think people realized quite the Herculean task getting, or maybe I can almost compare it to turning around a cruise ship in the Allegheny River. There's just no, it's going to be a lot of tight maneuvering and taking a whole lot more time than anybody realized. Marcus Pettersson for Nils Höglander and a second, or Nick Robertson and a second. I'm getting mixed reports on Nick Robertson. I don't know about Höglander because Vancouver is such a, I don't want to call Vancouver a mess this year because they're not at the bottom of the standings, but there's so much drama there. I wouldn't touch Höglander's contract. No, like, has it kicked in yet? Is it 3 years, $9 million beginning next year? Or did that first year, was that this year? Still wouldn't touch it. Not unless Vancouver kicked in draft picks. And I'm not giving up anything. Certainly not giving up Marcus Pettersson to take on that gamble. Jesse has a great question here. Jesse Fassbender. Will FSG let Jari sit in the AHL, and does that take his cap hit off the books? It takes $1.15 million off the books. So I'm trying to remember the numbers. I wrote the story. See, Jesse, you have to go on to Pittsburgh Hockey Now. We wrote the story a couple days ago, or when he was waived. $266,000 difference between the carried, or the stashed amount, which is $1.15 million, and Joel Blomqvist's salary. So the Penguins, with that swap, are saving about $266,000 on the salary cap. Next year, that 1.1, I think, goes up to 1.25 million. So that's what they'll get, off of Tristan Jarry's salary if they don't buy him out. I believe a buyout is the most likely course of action. Next year, they would save about $3.5 million if they buy him out. Like, he would cost, I think, 1.7 against the cap. It's years 2 and 3 of the buyout that were pretty brutal. Year 2, Jarry would cost $5 million against the salary cap, so they would literally save $375,000. But when you factor a replacement, then they're in the red. Year 3, he was going to cost $4 million against the salary cap. $4 million and change. So there again, by year 3, you think Joel Blomqvist will have signed a better contract. So they're probably in the red year 3 too, or about even. It's years 5, 6, and 7, or I'm sorry, years 4, 5, and 6, where Jarry would only cost $797,000 against the cap if they buy him out. I think with a $100 million salary cap, that's nothing. I got a text from Dave and Shelley. Let me make sure. Okay, nothing's going on. All right, let me get to that regular dude. I just look at all the teams the Penguins have to pass, and I don't see them passing all of them. I don't see it. That's the thing. The Penguins can play well, but other teams are going to play well too. I don't think you're going to see a race to the bottom like you saw last year. I think teams like Montreal and even Columbus just has a little bit of an edge. They're going to fight. Philadelphia is going to fight. And Ottawa is finally, got some starch in their shorts after years of just not being good enough. Goaltending certainly helps. Jason, there's 6 teams ahead of the Penguins for the second wild card. The Islanders are right there too. No, the Islanders are technically right there, but no, the Islanders really are right there. Why is Vegas hockey on here? Because I wanted it to. Hannah is a hockey head. She covered the Penguins in the early season. She has been doing some podcasts in Pittsburgh, kind of covering the Penguins from, that way for the last couple of months. And I like talking to Hannah. That's why. Christopher, it's not just who they need to jump. Dubas is looking to weaken the team with these trades. I don't know if he's looking to weaken the team, but that's the other shoe I mentioned when we're talking with Joe. When this other shoe drops, it's not going to be pleasant or pretty. The team isn't going to get better by trading Marcus Pettersson. Not today, anyway. Ducks are the 5th worst in the league with 42 points, and the Pens are 10th with 48. Yeah. Okay. Marcus Pettersson and Rutger McGroarty for Trevor Zegras. Stop it. Stop it. Decoded. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it now. So you're giving away 2 very valuable assets for Trevor Zegras. Haven't we been over this on Trevor Zegras, who really has to prove to a lot of the league that he takes his job seriously and that he can learn to play a 200-foot game with more than just highlight reel goals? Trevor Zegras will not cost half of... Trevor Zegras wouldn't cost Marcus Pettersson or McGroarty. You can get him for much less. So if Kyle Dubas called Patty Verbeek with that deal, Verbeek would put Dubas on hold to stop laughing before picking it up to accept. Oh, yeah, we mentioned with Hannah. The Jackets sent him and a second for Jordan Harris. And Jordan Harris was a nice defenseman prospect, but kind of a 6'7" guy. Yeah. So the Blue Jackets gave up a second pick with Line A. Yeah. I really thought the Penguins should have been in on that. Just imagine Line A with Malkin, Raquel and Rust with Crosby, Bunting, and oh boy, that would have been a top 6. Let's see here. Get somebody new. Archangel. Dubas has to figure out a way to dump Jari and Graves. I don't know how, but he needs to find a way. Yeah, you can't buy them both out. You certainly don't want to buy out Ryan Graves, who after this year will have 4 years remaining on that contract, which means a buyout you'd be paying for 8 more years. Think about that. That puts you into like 2032. I mean, 2032, at that point, Don Trump Jr. is running for president. Or maybe is already president. I don't know. Barron's almost president by that point. I know I made some of your eyes roll. Some of you just cringed and just logged off. Oh my God, I can't think about it. I kid. Let's see here. Jari, 50% retain. Okay, so Dakota's just going to play general manager here. I'm game here. I'm game, Dakota. Jari with 50% retained to the Flyers for Rasmus Ristolainen. Now you're warm. I did sort of hint that the Penguins and Flyers could do a one-up trade, Jari for Ristolainen. That was before the Penguins traded. The Penguins waived Jari. That might have some legs. The Penguins might have to kick in a little sweetener because I think Tortorella actually likes Ristolainen quite a bit. And I can see why. A right-handed defenseman in the NHL right now is gold. It's a left-handed reliever. It's every rare thing, and teams are scrambling for righties. I think the Penguins have to give up more than Jari and 50%, but I think you're on the right track with that one. I endorse that deal. All right, let's go to Sonny. Considering Jari was re-signed only 1 month into Dubas's tenure, wouldn't the vast majority of the decision to sign him have come from ownership, management, and player feedback? No. Don't forget, at the time, all of management, or most of management, had been wiped clean. Chris Pryor was kind of the bridge, the holdover. And he was elevated to the director of scouting. Other than that, I mean, some of the scouts stuck around, but there was a pretty good clean sweep of Hextall's people that occurred. Player feedback, yeah, that a little bit of that, you know, you don't sign a guy based on player feedback. No, the Jari contract came down to there were 2 goalies on the market. There was Jonas Korpisalo and there was Tristan Jari. And Korpisalo was not a starting goalie. Ottawa tried to pay him like one, almost hoping against hope they could make it work, and that lasted a year. So Dubas looked at his options and had one option left. It's kind of like eating at Denny's at 3 a.m. You look around at your options and you're like, okay, we're going to Denny's. Now, Dubas paid a premium for Jari. That was probably that was the biggest problem. Whether it was in terms of years, the money, Dubas did pay a premium for Jari. We'll never know if another team was driving up the price or if Dubas just acquiesced to get it done because it's July 1st, as Jim Rutherford was fond of saying, on July 1st, you don't pay what you want, you pay what the player asks. Give me a second here to get a drink. Sorry. my giant 1 liter. Also, here's lunch. There's a little grocery store around the corner. LA is a funky place, man. In LA, I kid you not, the grocery store is around the corner. There's also a Whole Foods, which not my deal. The grocery store. So out front, this is what makes LA so weird. You obviously every corner, there's an unfortunate person sleeping on that corner. So yesterday, walking past on the way to the arena, there's a mid-90s Honda Civic without the front end, basically, parked outside the grocery store. And a Porsche 911 pulls in right behind it to park. And I just thought, that's LA. The richest of the rich, the toughest luck of the toughest luck. And it kind of all just sort of exists without commingling. Anyway, okay. Gable says, Hannah, if you're moving to Vegas, stay away from Boulder Highway. If you get a place near the practice facility in Summerlin, you'll be good. Yeah, don't worry. I spent my time out in Vegas. Hannah's not moving there. I'm not letting her. Well, I can't stop her if she really wants to. But I've advised her not to move out to Vegas just yet. We're gonna slow build Vegas hockey now, or slow rebuild Vegas hockey now. Yeah, Summerlin was pretty cool, isn't it? That's where everybody lives, is in Summerlin. Which means I would live somewhere else. What's living downtown or living just off of downtown like? When I was out there in for the 23 Cup run, I spent most of my free time downtown. And I would wander off of Fremont as far as I could walk just to get into the local scene. I like the local stuff so much better than touristy stuff. Lizotte for Nick Robertson? You're killing me, Decoded. That you were warm for a second. Now you're giving up a valuable fourth line center for a player who just no. What are you thinking, man? Jimmy Norris. Phil Bork cracked me up the other night when he called for the Pens to punch someone in the face for slashing Ned after he froze the puck. What a beauty. Yeah, well, there was that. And for Adam Larson cross-checking Sidney Crosby, yeah, the Penguins owe their opponents a few punches. By the way, don't forget that Adam Larson cross-check because the Penguins play Seattle here in a week. Is it a week? It's not quite a week. It's, 5 days. Regular Dude says, I think what Kyle could do, he sells sooner rather than later, then takes the rest of the season to evaluate what he has left, how the Penguins play post-trade deadline shapes plans for next season, specifically Erik Karlsson. Interesting. That's almost a reasoned and rational take, Regular Dude. That has no place on the internet. Don't be doing that again. By the way, people mistake my facetious voice for my angry voice. Maybe it's just in the eyes. Yeah, that was my facetious voice. That was pretty good. I don't think Karlsson has time. I don't think Dubas can turn this around quickly enough for Erik Karlsson to stay. He's trying. Karlsson is giving him the latitude and leeway to keep trying while that room fights for a playoff spot. I think this summer, Erik Karlsson is probably the big get again. Did you see him last night? My God, Karlsson was good last night. He was 4-star. That first period alone, he was skating past his own teammates, just flying by them, flying by the Kings. And when he plays like that, like Grizzlick said to me, before the road trip, man, when he's dialed in, it's fun to watch. And Grizzlick has a front row seat. Yeah, I think Karlsson will have a few suitors. I don't know that the Penguins will get a first and second round pick like they gave up. They might have to eat some salary like San Jose did with Mikael Granlund. And you see how poorly that's worked out for them. That was my facetious voice again. Let's see here. Montreal, Detroit, Ottawa are well ahead of Pittsburgh. Yeah. Let's see here. Detroit and Chicago tried retooling and failed, just like Dubas failed to retool in 2023. I don't recall Detroit trying to retool. They were patching and they were patching and they were patching. I suppose that's semantics. Okay. Yeah, I think it is fair to say, Jason, that Dubas did fail to retool 2023. Let's get some new folks in here. Okay, yeah, Höglander's extension does kick in next year. So beginning next year, 3 years, $9 million. Not touching that unless you give me a second round pick at least. Oh, I got to the end of the comments. Very cool. So you can drop some more comments in. We're all caught up here. I can get to the some of the trade stuff too. So it's not fun to talk about Marcus Pettersson being traded. I don't think anybody in that locker room has treated me and my colleagues with more respect than Marcus Pettersson. You don't really care about that. I understand. But it just speaks to the kind of guy Marcus Pettersson is, where he will give you a thoughtful, clear answer. It might not be what you expected. It might not be what you wanted. Sometimes it might toe the team line. But if he's telling you X or Y, you can kind of believe it. Some guys are just, reading off a cue card. Okay, cliche number one, give that answer. Cliche number two, here you go. It's the world we live in. That's not unique to the Penguins, or, that's every professional sports team that has a reporter covering them. They, they kind of rehearse, or they get their answers beforehand. They don't get the questions, they get the answers. It's like Jeopardy, I guess. Pettersson, I don't think doesn't want to be traded. He found his hockey home in Pittsburgh. Don't forget, that was the Daniel Sprong trade. The Penguins traded Daniel Sprong to Anaheim for Marcus Pettersson. And let me hold the microphone here. The Penguins traded Sprong to Anaheim for Pettersson, who at that time was like their seventh defenseman. He was 23, seventh defenseman fighting for NHL airspace, comes to the Penguins and flourishes almost immediately. I still laugh because the guy he flourished beside was Jack Johnson, the vilified, the terrible, he is the boat anchor dragging down this team, single-handedly killing their salary cap and any chance at the Stanley Cup. Launch him into the sun. He's awful. And they put Pettersson on the left. They moved Jack Johnson to the right. And lo and behold, that pairing really worked for, the time it existed. Marcus Pettersson becomes this steady and stable NHL defenseman. I hope that he lands somewhere that he likes. Got a nice young family. His wife brought their little boy. You would have guessed immediately they were Swedish. There was no doubt they were Swedish. His little boy is probably a year and a half old, banging the glass. He sees his dad. That's Marcus Pettersson. And it's going to be a shame to see him go somewhere else. I think he does. I'm probably going to scale back my prediction of a late first-round pick for him, like Sean Walker got last year, only because of Pettersson's up and down, season this year. All right, Dakota is back, says Raquel for Dylan Cousins. Here's my thing on that. Why would Buffalo do that? Why would Buffalo take a 30-year-old winger when they're going to, they have to build? By the time Buffalo is ready for Raquel's contract is up. Plus, I think Buffalo's going to get more than Raquel. It does have some legs, though. I'll give you that. There's some good intersection there. Let's see here. I see some crosstalk. That's always cool. Big Joe says, do you see any prospects making the leap anytime soon? I'd like to see Bros and McGroarty play together, even if on a fourth line role. I do. I think after the Four Nations or after the trade deadline, one or both of those guys are going to be up. I didn't get good vibes when I talked to Wilkes-Barre coach MacArthur. When I asked him about Bros, his answer didn't leap off the page at me. So it leads me to believe there's still more work they want to do with him. Maybe he doesn't get there this year. I do think McGroarty comes back. Maybe St. Ivany gets another whirl when he gets healthy. Let's see here. Josh says, I heard earlier in the season that Malkin could be on the trade block. Do you think there's any way they trade him? No. JR, is that the old Space Ghost? The Pens have to go 23-10 to get to 94 points, which would hopefully get them into the playoffs. Chance of them getting to 94 points. Is it really 94 points that Montreal and Ottawa are on pace for? I think my analysis about 3 weeks ago was that 91 points could get you there this year. Still not much different. Your math is still pretty close. They still have to basically have a 600 plus winning percentage between now and the end. What's the chance of that? 1 in 5. I think that's a fair assessment of their playoff hopes. If they run the table on this West Coast swing and get back, maybe it's 2 in 5, 40% chance. Let's see here. Aaron, I might have missed earlier commentary, but is there any truth to the rumors that Dubas finally starts the fire sale this trade deadline? Yes, Aaron, you missed me beating it down as hard as I possibly could. There will be Penguins trades. There will not be a fire sale. Dubas is not ever holding a fire sale. He has stated this publicly. There is no tear it down to the studs rebuild coming. This ain't gonna happen. So trades, yes. Fire sale, absolutely not. Bavillier for a 5th round pick, McGroarty up to the Pens. Let me ask you this question. How valuable is a 5th round pick? It's not. I think, I would, Bavillier, if you don't get a fetching return, you try to re-sign him. You probably can afford to do so. And here's a guy who can play 4th line, play 1st line. That's Mike Sullivan's ideal kind of depth forward, right? That's the Dominic Simone, except that Bavillier finishes. I didn't even think of the Dominic Simone angle until just now. Oh man, that is. I mean, give a coach a player with that kind of versatility, and they'd love it. Oh, we're back to decoded here. Malkin 50% retained to the Jets for Braden Yeager, or to the Caps for Cole Hudson. No, neither of those is going to happen. Sorry. And they're not trading Malkin. Is Emil, I assume, JR, you mean Emil Bemstrom getting a chance in the NHL this year? I don't know. I genuinely do not know what the Penguins truly think of him. I think I'd mentioned him to Jason Spezza when I had a chance to talk with Spezza in Nashville, kind of one-on-one. It was an official on-the-record conversation, so I have nothing that I can wink and nod to you about. I happen to think he probably deserves it. And the first game that he plays outside the dots and plays weak sauce, straight back. But, man, if he gets inside the dots and lets that shot go, plays a little bit physical, he's got the speed. I mean, the tools are there. Does the toolbox have them in the right order or the right places? Let's get to some new blood here. Sir D. Sir. Just a spiritual gut feeling based on nothing. Not sure we needed to do that Yeager-McGroarty trade. Kind of like trading an orange for a grapefruit. That's an interesting. I hesitate, and I'm gonna wrap it up on this one. I hate downgrading or criticizing or feeling like anyway I'm beating up an 18 or 19-year-old player, because they really are Play-Doh at that point, right? They haven't been put through the Play-Doh hamburger helper squishy thing to get anything out of them. There were obvious flaws I saw in Yeager's game when I scouted him at the Memorial Cup last June. And by the way, I hope, or I guess May, I hope this is why you follow me, why you go to Pittsburgh Hockey Now, and why you do all these things, because nobody else went to the Memorial Cup. I take that back. Yes, somebody else did go to the Memorial Cup to catch a game, but nobody else went up on a scouting report quite like I did. I hope I hope this is what I bring to the Pittsburgh hockey media scene, is the ability to scout, some of the ability to break down the games, the ability to get technical. That's what I enjoy. I don't go to talk to a player and get their input on their development or a coach's input. I of course got that as part of my scouting, but to the point I was making, I didn't like the way Jaeger played at the Memorial Cup. Hated it, in fact. I thought it was tepid. I thought it was cautious. I thought he was focusing on playing defense until the last 5 minutes when his team was behind. And then he kind of charged into the fray. I wanted to see that guy at the beginning of the game. I saw some other, things I think will be cleaned up over the course of his career, but he wasn't as defensively gifted or conscious as I expected. The Team Canada debacle will stick with him a little bit. He was the captain, and for a second straight year with him on the team, Canada gets summarily dismissed in the quarterfinals. Now, Cameron and the rest of Hockey Canada are kind of wearing that failure because they didn't bring a lot of the top 10 draft picks from 2024 to the team, but there were enough top picks from 22 and 23 that they should have been fine. They needed more from Braden Jaeger. So why did the Penguins make that Jaeger from McGroarty trade? Is because, and this is me exaggerating a little bit, is because Kyle Dubas saw a young winger who really could be the next Jake Gensel. I don't think it's an exaggeration to think McGroarty can be the next Jake Gensel for the Penguins. He's got that hockey IQ, and he's got that shot, and he's got the offensive touch. He's putting it together. He had some work to do. Maybe he wasn't as prepared coming out of Michigan as he thought, as the Penguins hoped. But to everybody's credit, there has been not an ounce of negativity. McGroarty has hit the weight room like an animal. He's adding layers and figuring out the pro game, and the Penguins are giving him every ounce of support to do so. And I think that's going to be a happy ending. What do I think of McGroarty's low numbers in the AHL compared to Maverick Bourque? I mean, I'm not comparing him to Maverick Bourque. McGroarty's low numbers in the AHL were very low in the beginning. 1 assist in the first 8 games. But since then, he's been on that 0.6, 0.7 points per game pace. He and Bros are figuring it out on the way. I know I said last question, but I wanted to kind of put a bow on that. Let's see here. Okay, here's the last one, I promise. Which of the cheap defensemen do I think will be back next year? POJ, Shea, Grzelcyk. I appreciate your spelling of Grzelcyk there, JR. I hope that for both sides, the Penguins realize that Pierre-Olivier Joseph, but I said that's what I said, right? P.O. Joseph fits in Pittsburgh, and both sides are better off being together. Maybe P.O. can get more money somewhere else, but he fits in Pittsburgh, and I think he should stay. I think the Penguins should want him to stay. So, yes, maybe lesson learned there. Maybe give him a little raise into 7 figures, and all will be forgiven. I think Ryan Shea is the new Chad Ruedel. Ryan Shea can play the left. In a pinch, he can play the right. He's not going to cost you $1 million. He's going to cost you $800,000-$900,000, and you have a safety blanket there. with Ryan Shea. So I think he stays. Grzelcyk, on the other hand, a top 4 defenseman. Oh, why in the hell didn't I think of Matt Grzelcyk when we were talking about trades? Completely spaced on him. Get to it at the end of the show. A left-handed defenseman who played top 4, run a power play. I think Grzelcyk gets traded, actually. See, sometimes players just escapes my mind, and I don't even think about it. I should have had the lineup in front of me. My bad. Okay, it's now noon in LA. You and I have talked for 90 minutes. I think we can call it a day, right? Oh, wait, Big Joe says, I'm going to put a button on here. Do Bros and McGroarty play with an edge? Not as you are going to define edge. You're defining it as in terms of the way Michael Bunting plays. And Bros has a little in him. McGroarty has some jam in him if and when he wants. Both can work the wall. Both can be physical on the wall and successful as well around the yellow. So an edge, not as you define it, but both can handle themselves with some muscle and in some tight spaces. How's that? McGroarty is getting much better at that, by the way. That's why it was so important. The Penguins put him in the weight room. And, when I was talking with Spezza when we made the trip to Nashville, that was the first thing he said about McGroarty was, he admired how hard McGroarty's working in the weight room, to get that professional body. So that's it. 91, coming up on 92 minutes. Okay. Do me a favor, like, subscribe, tell all your friends that I'm not so terrible, and we'll do this again next week. This has been No Pucks Given and the live Penguins chat. Have fun.